I used to think I was just a bad cook, seriously. I'd follow recipes to the letter, but my meals always felt flat. The chicken was a bit dry, the veggies were just okay. And I had this nagging feeling in the back of my mind that my family was dealing with more little bugs and sniffles than they should be. Nothing serious, just of. I blamed my skills, I blamed the oven, I even blamed the recipes. I tried everything and nothing seemed to work, and then I found out the truth and it was hiding in plain sight. Two things I used every single day, the absolute workhorses of my kitchen, were the real problems. They were silently sabotaging every dish and even worse, potentially affecting my family's health. Once I replaced them, everything changed. It turns out I wasn't a bad cook, and today, I'm going to show you why it might not be your fault either. Section 1, the first saboteur, your dull, damaged knives. Let's start with culprit number 1, your knives. We all have them, and most of us don't give them a second thought until we're trying to slice a ripe tomato and end up with a pulpy, squashed mess. I figured my knives were just old. I didn't realize they were actively making my food worse and were actually dangerous. Here's one of the most backward truths of the kitchen: a dull knife is far more dangerous than a sharp one. It all comes down to pressure. A sharp knife glides through food, but a dull one forces you to push down hard. That pressure is an accident waiting to happen. When the blade finally slips, all that force has to go somewhere, and it's often right toward fingers. According to OSHA, using a dull knife means you have to use much more force, which dramatically increases your chance of injury. But the danger isn't just about getting cut. A dull blade doesn't slice, it crushes. It brutally tears through the delicate cell walls of your herbs, vegetables, and meats. This is why your basil turns brown so fast and why your tomatoes look mangled instead of clean cuts. You're losing flavor and ruining the texture, all because the tool isn't doing its job. Those crushed, torn surfaces on your food can also be more welcoming to bacteria. And this brings me to the really scary part: cross-contamination. I used to think a quick rinse was good enough. I was wrong. Researchers at the University of Georgia did a study on this and found that common kitchen utensils, especially knives, are major culprits in spreading bacteria from one food to another. Pathogens like Salmonella and E. coli can hitch a ride on a knife blade and contaminate the next thing you cut. The study found that after being used on just one contaminated item, a knife could go on to contaminate subsequent produce. In fact, when they tested different foods, slicing tomatoes resulted in one of the highest levels of knife contamination. Think about it. You chop raw chicken, give the knife a quick, lazy rinse, and then slice a fresh tomato for a salad. You may have just created a perfect storm for foodborne illness. When you add tiny chips, nicks, and rust spots to the blade, you're basically giving bacteria little apartments to live in, making your knife even harder to clean. Section 2, the second saboteur, your scratched nonstick pans. The second villain in my kitchen was my collection of nonstick pans, and I loved them. They made cleanup a dream, and I felt like a pro flipping pancakes. But over time, I noticed the dark coating was flaking. I saw scratches from where I'd accidentally used a metal fork. I figured it was no big deal. I was just eating tiny, harmless flakes of coating, right? Wrong again. That nonstick coating is usually a chemical called polytetrafluoroethylene, or PTFE, a type of PFAS, also known as a forever chemical because it doesn't break down easily in our bodies or the environment. For years, a different chemical called PFOA was used to make these coatings, and it was linked to a ton of health problems. Companies phased out PFOA by 2015, but the PTFE coatings themselves can still be a problem, especially when they get damaged. Here's what happens. When that nonstick surface is scratched, it can release plastic particles into your meal. A 2022 study found that a single surface scratch on a coated pan could release around 9,100 plastic particles. If the coating is more heavily damaged, that number can jump into the millions. You are quite literally eating bits of the pan. It gets worse when you add high heat. Heating these pans over 500 degrees F, especially if they're already scratched, can cause them to release fumes and particles, while modern PFOA-free pans are considered safe when they are in good condition and used correctly. The conversation changes once they're damaged. Long-term exposure to various PFAS chemicals has been linked by studies to health concerns like liver damage, thyroid disease, and a suppressed immune system. That low-grade recurring sickness my family was experiencing. The more I read, the more I wondered if this was a piece of the puzzle. And just like with dull knives, a damaged pan sabotages your cooking. Once the nonstick surface is compromised, food starts to stick. Cheap pans also warp over time. creating hot spots that burn one part of your food while leaving another part raw. It's another way your tools can make you feel like a bad cook, when in reality, the pan is what's failing. Now, if any of this is sounding a little too familiar, and you're starting to give your own knives and pans the side eye, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're all on this journey to a healthier, happier kitchen together, and I've got a lot more of these aha moments to share. Section 3, the solution: a kitchen reset. Okay, the problems are definitely concerning, but the good news is that the solutions are simple and totally empowering. This is where you take back control. First, the knife situation. You don't need a 20-piece block set, you just need one or two good knives and the know-how to take care of them. A high-quality chef's knife is a game changer, but what's even more important is maintenance. A dull knife can be sharpened, and a sharp knife can be kept that way with a few easy habits. Number 1, learn to hone your knife. Honing isn't the same as sharpening. A honing steel just realigns the microscopic edge of the blade, keeping it straight and effective. You should do this pretty often, maybe after every few uses. Sharpening, which actually shaves off metal to create a new edge, only needs to be done a couple of times a year for a typical home cook. Number 2, wash your knives by hand with hot, soapy water right after you use them. Never ever put them in the dishwasher. The intense heat and harsh detergents can wreck the handle and cause the blade to corrode, and don't leave them to soak in the sink. Dry them right away and store them properly, on a magnetic strip or in a sheath, not clanking around in a drawer where they'll get nicked and dull. Now for the pans, it's time to break up with scratched nonstick. Toss any pan that is warped, flaking, or heavily scratched. It's just not worth the risk. The great news is that the alternatives are fantastic and can last a lifetime. Your best bets are stainless steel, cast iron, and carbon steel. Cast iron is a classic for a reason. Once you season it, which is just baking on thin layers offal to create a natural nonstick surface, it's incredible for searing and holds heat like a champ. Carbon steel is similar but lighter, making it a great all-rounder. And stainless steel is the workhorse of pro kitchens. It's durable, heats evenly, and gives you an amazing sear. Yes, there's a little learning curve. You have to get the pan hot before adding oil and food, but once you nail it, you'll feel like a pro. With these pans, it's smart to use wood or silicone utensils, but they are far more durable than their chemical-coated cousins. Once I made these two basic changes, once I got one good knife and learned to keep it sharp, and once I swapped my scratch-up pans for timeless cast iron and stainless steel, my kitchen transformed. The change wasn't just in the tools, it was in the food itself. My vegetables were vibrant and perfectly cooked. My meat had a beautiful, even sear. Everything just asterisk tasted better. My confidence shot up. I started to love cooking again, and my family noticed the difference right away. That feeling of being a bad cook was gone, replaced by the joy of making something truly nourishing. It wasn't me, it was my tools all along. So I'll leave you with this: take a good, hard look at your kitchen. Are your knives more of a hazard than a help? Are your pans flaking into your food? You have the power to fix that. You don't need to be a top chef to cook a beautiful, healthy meal for the people you love. Sometimes you just need to give yourself the right tools for the job. Now I have to ask, have you ever had a kitchen tool that was secretly sabotaging you? Let me know your story in the comments below.